You're welcome.
Good morning, everybody. Thank you for being here. We would like to talk this morning a little bit with you about communication, branding, and marketing in politics. We kind of go through that in those four topics, right? We start out with some marketing, then we switch to branding after that. What is the purpose of creating a brand? I will give way then to Hendrik for that. He's going to talk about communication. And in the end, Metzler, who's still going to join us, which is the sole purpose of why we did this. We'll talk a little bit about politics, sort of, if you want, brand constituency. Now, I know this is a business masterclass, so why do we do that? Why do we mix marketing, communication, and branding with politics? 5 years ago, we got the task, us two, got the task to orchestrate and design an election for the German parliament. And what we learned is that we had the feeling that the way an election is orchestrated and organized is much less professional than how you would organize a business, which we found surprising because in politics there's, a little more at stake than at any business, right? It touches everybody's lives. The thing you're trying to convince people of is normally an idea, a good idea or a bad idea, but there are strong emotional feelings about what you regard as important in politics, more than you regard as I don't know, when you buy a T-shirt or a burger. So I'm going to start off. Hendrik is going to take over, and at the end, Janus is going to talk a little bit about where this election led 5 years later. So to be on the same level, if we talk about marketing and politics, we have to ask ourselves, do we even talk about marketing and politics, or just do we talk about marketing in general? Now, what is marketing? Well, you can ask different people. If you ask the American Marketing Association, marketing is the activity, set of institutions and processes for creating, communicating, delivering, and exchanging offerings that have value for customers, clients, partners, and society at large. Now, this is for me, that is always striking. The main purpose of marketing is creating value to the customer and society at large. If you read that, you would not think that the Marketing Association had politics in mind, even though it fits perfectly. Now, so if you want, in that sense, there's a key fact. I'll have a couple of key facts during the 20 minutes that I talk. I will have a couple of key facts during the presentations that I talk. And one of those key facts, they will change your life forever. No, they will not. They're just a little interesting at some of the things. So, marketing is about creating value for customers. Marketing is not advertising. A lot of people mix that up, and a lot of people got that wrong. In fact, if you just look at the word, marketing stems from bringing something to market. You create a product, you finish it, and go with your horse to the old market, and you try to sell it to people. Now, probably maybe you know a little bit about Germany and the elections, but just to be on the same level, I'll tell you a little bit about Germany, so that about the political system, so that you know what I'm talking about. We have national elections every 4 years. The people vote the parliament. We do not vote a president. We do not vote a chancellor. The only election that we have on a federal level in Germany is the parliament. So it's quite important. The parliament itself forms the execution, so our chancellor is voted for by the parliament. In Germany we have 299 electoral districts, and it's very simple. The person with the highest vote in an electoral district gets to go to the parliament. Well, it's not that simple because there you have a bias towards bigger parties, so there's also a list system in Germany. I will not go into that. For us, it's important to know those electoral districts. If you get the most votes, you win. So our area, if you want, so you have a map of Germany, and in the southwestern part, you have the region of Rhineland-Palatinate here. And in Rhineland-Palatinate, you have one of those 299 districts. And our task was to win this district. It's a pretty regular German area. You have a bigger town with 85,000 people there, 92 villages, 1.5 hours from north to west, so quite broad. If you want, in that little corner there's Frankfurt, if you know that, so it's pretty close. Now, what you start with normally, and so in that case also, you start with a business plan. So you want to win an election, so you make a plan on how you want to win that election. And, well, an important key fact, this is the second one, that is going to change your life. No, it's not. If you plan, planning replaces coincidence with mistake. But you need to plan anyway, because if you don't plan, there's no chance that you improve. You need to check what you did, and if that is successful. If it's not successful, you need to change it. And if you don't plan ahead, you cannot be better the next time you do. So you need to have a plan. Now, business plan is pretty simple, right? Business 101. First semester, second semester, depending on where you start, you sort of have a company, right? Then you have a product that you want to sell. You look at your market, where you want to sell that, and you look at the target market. So which people are most likely to buy your product. Now I put another arrow in there because there's no real starting point, if you want to. Sometimes the company is already set up, they're thinking about a new product that they want to sell. Sometimes you have a certain target group and you think, well, they need this and that solution, so you come up with a product afterwards. So this is kind of not a cycle, but it starts at some point, and all the other ones follow in that sense. And ultimately, if you set that up, you at the end generate your sale. You bring your product to market. Now, to double check that with what we did, well, if you want to translate that into politics, we did that. Our company was the CDU party, right? Sort of. Our product was Jan Metzler, which is sitting there. This is the guy we needed to sell. The market was the electoral district, so the area that we were running, and the target group were, depending on how you define that, either the voters or the citizens. The voters, because they were the only ones who can cast their vote, right? On election day, they're the only ones that can cast their vote. But you can also have, of course, an influence on others, even though you cannot vote, right? If you influence your kids, for example, that are just below 18 years old, and maybe you talk to each other at home about politics, that might influence them. So this is, but in general, in our case, the target group are the voters. And at the end, of course, we don't make a sale, but we want to try to win an election. Ultimately, that's not that much different. We just open the store every 4 years on election day, and we try as many people to convince that our idea or our product is better than the ones from the competition. So if you have that 4 schemes, what we really did start out with looking at our market. I don't want to go into the details, but just to stress the fact that you really have to analyze what you're doing before you start marketing something. And this is, it really doesn't matter. It's a little abstract, but it really doesn't matter if you go into politics, if you try to, I don't know, sell watches on Instagram or do whatever. It's always, you should look at your market and where you want to sell it. So we really looked intensively on where our market lies, what we have to do there. We looked at our target group. Just to give you one example, this is the electoral district. There was an analysis of potential on who is most likely to vote for our candidate. Because there's a candidate, of course, but he's not independent of the party. So that we had kind of key figures about which area in our district is most likely to vote for his party. So where you have the most sympathy for the ideas we are promoting. You can actually, this was quite interesting, you could actually boil that down to roads. This is actually a map of some village where you really can see from the streets. I don't know how they do that. Where you can really see where it's most likely to people cast their vote for Jan. There was one thing we did. We went from door to door, that canvassing thing, and we really tried to plan that, to go back to the business plan. And this is the problem about marketing. At the end, it's hard to judge if the one thing that you did was the one thing that made the difference, because it's not mathematics, right? But it's more important to get your facts in the beginning so that you know where you're going in that sense. For example, we made a survey. We utilized Facebook and tried to figure out from the people, well, what are the most important topics that you would like to talk about in an election? We tried to figure out what our target group wants before we started trying to sell our product. Now, at the end, you have to look at your product, and if you want to look at that from that perspective, what is the value to the customer for the thing that you want to sell, or for the politician you want them to vote for? Well, in our case, we identified a couple of goals that we thought is important for people. They want a contact person in Berlin, so in the capital, right? I have a problem or I have an issue, I vote for the person so that he does in the capital a task for me. He represents me. In an ideal case. You want to problem solve. You want to go to the politics in general so that they make your life better. This is why we have elections, right? Also, in an ideal case, it doesn't always work like that. But normally you vote for people so that they can take care of your country or your district, so that you can do something else. Study, work, go to school. In our case, we have the thing that you have a sort of a distance between politicians and people, a lot of times. There's not that much direct contact. I don't know how that is in the Ukraine, but in Germany it's not that usual in general that you can just call your representative, your politician. And we wanted to change that. We wanted somebody on an eye level that is not afraid to talk directly to people. And we knew Jan is not a guy who's afraid of that. So this is something that we thought was a great value to the customer, to the voter, and this is what we needed to promote during the election. Now, Business 101, again, when you start looking at your product, you always start with a SWOT analysis. This is plain and simple. Most of the things that you do in business are actually pretty simple. Business is not rocket science. So you start with, your strength, your weaknesses, your opportunities, and your threats. Well, the difference, there's always the question, what's the difference? Strength and weaknesses are key factors of the product you want to sell. You look at it, and what are the good things, what are the bad things, and opportunities and threats are the things that are outside of what you can influence. External factors. One example being, we started in 2013. We didn't have a refugee crisis yet, so everybody loved Merkel. She got a big vote then. And of course, if a candidate is in the same party, that is a huge opportunity to use that. So we looked at the market, we looked at the target group, we looked at the product, and I didn't really look at the company in that sense because it was already there. Now, after that, you go to market. You try to do your sell. In our case, the election and that is the difference, the legislative period that follows after the election day. You have 4 years that you have to live up to the marketing that you did before because you want to resell your product 4 years later. If you are marketing something totally different, and this is important also what Henrik will tell you right now. If you market something totally different than what you follow up, you will ultimately dissatisfy your customer, which will result in that they will send you home. So to excite you with another key fact, during the election, during any business is trying to generate the best possible outcome with limited resources. You will never have unlimited resources, and you never have a marketing or advertising budget that is unlimited. So you have to look at your analysis. This is why the analysis is so important, because this costs time, but normally it's for free. And if you have that, you know exactly where to put your resources to try to get the best outcome. So you need to focus on those things that are most promising to what you're trying to do. In our case, I will not really go into detail with that, but in our case there were 3 areas that we needed to provide. A local area, so if you're on the road in the electoral district, what are you focusing on regarding your time, regarding your money, what you do with print and press, advertising and newspapers, stuff like that. And of course, online is a huge factor. It was a huge factor in 2013 and was even greater in 2007. Now, just to give you one example, what you did on local level, we also tried to get our figures straight. We talked to, there are a lot of people that are organized in the party that are trying to help. And we asked those people, well, what do you think is the most important fact to, what is most important for the people? Where should we put our effort if we're on the road? And then we got a pretty good idea of what the people are valuing and what we should focus on. Local point. There were different points, but I'm not going to go into detail with that. Print and press, I will skip that. Online, what a lot of businesses do wrong is there's that for the last maybe 8-7 years, you have that huge word of social media, and a lot of businesses have, and even in the highest areas, they sit there and they say, we have to do something with social media. And this is wrong. You have to figure out which social media can do something for you, and where do you want to concentrate on. If you don't do that, you mix up all the stuff and you don't do it right. If you don't do it right, don't do it at all. In our case, it was pretty obvious to use Facebook. just because in our area of business, sort of, if you want to say it like that, Facebook is the most useful. And we didn't go there and say, okay, this is probably what it is like, so we have to use Facebook and not Instagram and not Twitter. We really looked at the figures. Also, I'll not go into details, but we really looked in what age group, in what area group, and you find those figures online for free. In what area group are people using it? If we try to look at the general population, does that help? And at the end, how does that develop? We started out in 2019 because that was an election before we started. Up until end of 2012 when we started doing our planning. If you look at that figure, it gets even higher in 2007. So first, we looked at our figures before we tried to do that. So to sum that up a little bit, marketing is not about advertising. It's about making a plan on how you want to do your business. You have to analyze your product, your target group, and your market. And of course, you have to adapt if necessary. Because, as I said at the beginning, planning is knowing, also making mistakes, but trying to make it better the next time. So I will give to Henrik right now to talk about branding and communication, because this is actually the focus on what is important when we try to market something. Because with a brand, you create ultimately what you also need in politics. You create trust and a value. A shoe from Nike is not more worth than a no-name brand, but it's recognizable, and so it creates a certain value. And so this is ultimately what you also need in politics. You need to trust your politician, and this is the ultimate purpose. And if you want to make that. Now, what I want to stress before you start listening to Henrik at the end, what I said in the beginning, it's not about only the election day, but you want people to rebuy your product. You don't want to sell something that it's not true at the end. If your product doesn't hold the promise that you make when you brand it, people will be dissatisfied. And if you look at the 4 years after the election, obviously Jan got elected, so the plan that we did worked. But then you have 4 years, and you didn't know what happens during those 4 years. And a lot can happen if people don't buy everything, all right? We had the Greek crisis. We had in your case, the Crimean annexation, the crisis in East Ukraine. In Germany, we had a huge refugee crisis. We have a Brexit. England is leaving the European Union, which is huge. We have the war in Syria. And I'm just talking about 4 years. When we started out in 2013 and we made a plan, we didn't know all this is going to happen when this guy is in office. So this is where you have to think in 2017, when there is the next election, if you have to adapt in a certain situation. We have the situation in Turkey. We have Trump. And also, I always say that we were once football world champion not that long ago. Huh? So a lot of things can change in a very small amount of time. And Henrik is going to tell you now about branding and communication in that area.